One of the most unexpected people completely changed the direction of my life. Now, if you live outside of Australia, perhaps you don't know who that person is. His name is Julian O'Neill, and he was a very well-known rugby league player back in the 1990s, a very colourful character and well-loved. But this isn't a story about rugby league. This isn't a sports story. This is a story about a time in my life where everything looked amazing, like I completely had it together, that I was a very lucky woman, but all was not as it seemed. I was not having a very good time. But this is also a story, a conversation about how one small act of kindness, one conversation, one opportunity can make the biggest, the greatest of changes. Now, this story starts in Papua New Guinea. My husband had been working there, flying in, flying out, and then we had the opportunity to move up and live in Papua New Guinea personally. So we did that. We made the move from Brisbane to Port Moresby, completely changing our lifestyles. We moved into a compound, quite remote, isolated from the normal action of Port Moresby and the day-to-day life. And PNG is such an incredible place, beautiful country, beautiful people. It has, it has a reputation in the media. And sure, it's not all great. It is like one of the most dangerous places in the world to be a woman or a girl. However, for the most part, it was an incredible experience. It was a beautiful place, and I highly recommend. However, that's not my experience as I first arrived. And at first, I didn't really appreciate what I had just stepped into as I'd arrived. We were on site, everything is great, kids are going to school, husband's going to work, we live on this workplace site. And I did what a lot of people do, is I went about trying to be busy, finding something to do. I built a chicken coop. It was a kahuna. I had ducks, I had chickens. I would go and cook in the industrial kitchen with staff. I'd tell stories and share jokes and create friendships with a lot of the staff that were on site. And that looked functional. But underneath, not so great. And it didn't take long before I was downright feeling terrible. And I think a big part of that was a loss of purpose, a loss of meaning, a loss of connection. I was isolated. Everyone else had jobs, and I did not. And I didn't really recognize in the moment what was going on, but I can see now how the state of depression that I had started to fall into. I didn't have the language for it back then, but I absolutely just did not feel myself. And that is where Julian O'Neill enters the picture. My husband, at a bit of a loss, had a conversation with Julian. Now, Julian had been working in Papua New Guinea for a while now. Papua New Guineans love Julian. They love rugby league, especially the Brisbane Broncos. And at some point, my husband, being concerned about me, had said to Julian, "Can you help out Kathy? Can you find her something to do?" It wasn't anything big or dramatic. It was just one guy saying to another guy, "Can you help me out, mate? Can you help out my wife, who's having a breakdown?" And through that conversation, Julian ended up giving me an opportunity that changed the direction of my life, facilitating an opportunity for me to go and work at the Law and Justice Sector Secretariat, Papua New Guinean government. It was a volunteer role. I was the coordinator of the alcohol abuse desk, and honestly, it changed everything. Suddenly, I was sitting on the Papua New Guinean side of government, learning, contributing, being challenged, being stimulated, meeting people, learning the ways of systems, doing meaningful work, having a purpose. It was an enormous learning curve. Enormous. But I got to work with some incredible people. I felt alive again. I felt useful. I felt like myself. And from there in, the opportunities and the change of direction just flowed. That role became the doorway to where I spent the next decade in development work. And the thing that stays with me now is I don't think Julian, nor my husband, could have had any inkling in that conversation of just the impact that that one opportunity, that one act of kindness could have had on my life. That it did so completely. And I think about that from time to time. And I am so grateful. And I think it's a good reminder because we can sometimes not appreciate just the significance or the impact that an act of kindness that we show someone, or that someone shows us, can impact, influence, change. Because sometimes I think that we don't appreciate. How can we possibly see? But we can't. Because sometimes I think we underestimate the impact that we can have on somebody's life through those small acts of kindness. The opening a door, the making a connection, offering an opportunity can alter the direction of someone's life in ways that we may not be able to understand. I mean, it has been called the boys' club. But how it works for women, sometimes it's purpose, sometimes it's contribution, sometimes it's being back in a meaningful movement again. And for me, all that started was in a conversation. Anyway, that is one of those life stories that you may not realize until much later down the line that it was a pivotal moment. That small acts of kindness have the capacity to change our lives without realizing that in the moment. And perhaps you may never know. I'm quite sure Julian O'Neill has no clue around the impact that his support gave to me and the impact of that on my life. Maybe you've had someone quietly or radically change the direction of your life through an act of kindness. Maybe.